Hello, everyone, and welcome to Critical Faculty. Today, we are going to be having a dig, a very big one at the creator of the universe one more time. And we're going to be specifically talking about the state of 50% of this world's population, namely females. And I've got just the right female to talk about these issues. Hello, Nuria, how are you?
Hi, honey. I'm wonderful. How are you? Thank you for having
Very
me on.
Thank you for coming again on Critical Faculty. I'm a big fan. Your channel is growing really, really fast. By the way, folks, Nori, and we're going to display that in the middle of the conversation. In the description of the video, Noria's great channel is in the description. Please check it out, subscribe, and start watching the wonderful content she make when she has time.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
thank you, honey. And I have been slacking a bit lately, but there's stuff in the works. So yeah, please do go and subscribe, especially related to the things we're talking about today, women-centric things. That's kind of where I spend my energy.
And I'm just going to give a shout out to my friend David McDonald. He's a big fan.
Likewise, as am I. Thank you, David. He's also up very late, but he's used to it, I guess.
Yeah, well, we're in Aussie here. I think we do like the evenings and nights, and it's a thing. Especially it's started to get cold, and it's been cold in the last couple of days. So those who like to have a bit of a siesta in the afternoon and stay up and do some work while things are quiet, it's a thing. It's magic.
That's the trick. I was wondering, I was like, are you guys just keeping up with the rest of the world because that's where all the action is, or?
And I think that's part of it too. Most of my streams are even for the Middle East. You know how the Middle Easterns are sort of late risers. Nobody likes mornings in there. Like the Mediterranean, like the Italian and the Spanish. It's the hot weather make it sort of make sense that people want to stay up at night and sleep it off in the daytime.
It's true.
Right. So today we are going to be discussing the state of women in Islam, but we've discussed the topic of sort of off air, and we think decided that we want to start from the very beginning, because it seems that from the word go, God has had a weird plans in terms of what He's got for 50% of the world population. So He's created Adam, and then He saw that Adam was sad. And then created Eve from his rib
Sad and lonely, yeah.
as an afterthought. So, what do you think about the idea that women are for the mere entertainment for men?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it sounds like. I mean, even from the get-go, Adam was the main thought of God, the Abrahamic God at the time. As you said, Eve is a convenient afterthought when God, supposedly the all-knowing God, doesn't know that Adam's going to be lonely and requires a partner. And again, just the misogynistic element of being made from a rib of a man, so not even a creation in its own right. But Hanney, just to go a little bit even before Eve, let's say, because I didn't know much about this in terms of the Islamic literature, but there was a Lilith in existence, right? So, I mean, I've tried to ask Derek a couple of times. He's done some good streams on Lilith, but it's interesting, I think, the fact that she doesn't even make it over into Islam. But
It's not even mainstream Christianity. It's almost mythological, because Lilith was supposed to be the very first woman, and she was rebellious, and she did not want to play ball, and that's why she's actually used in vampire stories as the first vampire. And there's a lot of demonic, and so he's like a bit sort of a demon, or turned into a demon. So I'm not sure if it's made, like Bart Ehrman would probably would say that's folklore. That's not anywhere near the original text. But these are the addendums that have been added to the story from people who sort of trying to maybe apologize for women. So maybe there was like an early feminist movement where that Eve is so not. No, we don't want her to represent us. Let's create the rebellious woman.
Enough. We need a rebellious woman in the mix, exactly.
Yeah.
Because I would look into that some more as well, because when Derek was explaining, she was rebellious in the sense that she refused to go into the subjugated sexual position. And so essentially her rebelliousness just came out of her wanting to dominate. And then again, like you said, she was all vilified, and I guess she ended up as mythology, but who knows?
Yeah, well, yeah. Lilith wanted to be on top, literally. Right. So then the creation is a very interesting story, because I think it signals that how things are going to be run. It looks like God is fond of males, and to the point where, yeah, Eve was an afterthought, and then the state of women in Judaism, and we're probably going to brush over that in Christianity very, very quickly to move into Islam, but just to give people the right backgrounds of what happens there. There is a prayer in Judaism where a man would pray to God and say, "Thank you, God, for not creating me a woman." This is true. Like, this is actually true. So people can check it out. So it's almost like it's a curse to be created. And the original sin situation. This is really funny because it shows how most men would react even to date. When God was walking in the Garden of Evil after they've eaten from the forbidden fruit, we don't know if it was an apple or guava. Nobody knows, but it was a forbidden fruit, and they were hiding. And the omniscient God, asked them, "Where are you guys? Where the hell are you guys?" He didn't know.
God had a Where's Wally situation for his creation.
Yes, and it seems that they heard him because his flip flop, was making a sound while he was walking in the garden. They hid, and they said, "Why you're hiding?" Obviously, they realize they're naked, and hence the leaves. And he said, "Did you eat from the tree I told you not to eat from?" And Adam said, Adam represents most men in today's world. It's like, the woman you've created told me to eat.
True, Adam.
I always find that very funny.
Not much has changed, hey, honey? Since the very first inception of humanity, yeah.
And almost putting the blame back on God, because he's like, "Look, you're silly. If you haven't created her, I would have not."
Exactly. Wow. Blame it on God. Blame it on anyone but yourself.
So, what do you think of this little story? I mean, it's weird, isn't it?
I mean, it's the fact that we're just sold that story as the creation myth, like from the get-go of religion, and you're just supposed to accept it, except that all of these things have happened, whether it was the wicked snake that lied to Eve, and then Eve took a bite, and then she said to Adam, "Come on, stop being such a wuss." We would never know, but it's like you said, there's no focus on the fact that, Hanney, it gets darker, because what I was told is that the reason women menstruate and we go through the pain of childbirth is all because Eve ate that apple. So all of womankind for the rest of eternity would need to suffer because of one person. And again, that does not seem like something a just God would do or endorse, because I mean, even like Christianity, the fact that all your sins are you're redeemed because like Jesus died for your sins, so there's like a redemption element. But what I have absolutely nothing to do with what happened in the Garden of Eden, but the way that they have even like kind of turned having a normal biological aspect, such as a period every month, which enables you to have children, and which is what is required for the continuation of the human population. You've blamed that on the action of Eve, and just, I mean, even in India today, they have menstruation huts where you go separately if you're, while you're bleeding. It's a very toxic trait that seeps through every culture almost. I mean, women have been downtrodden since that story.
Yeah. Well, God acts like one of Stephen King's sort of gypsy personas and curse both men and women. Yeah. So men were cursed, that had their own curse. And women were cursed to always be attracted to men and have the pain of pregnancy and delivery, administration. Plus, but he also cursed the serpent, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
And Ricky Gervais, I think it was funny. Ricky Gervais put it. He actually said, and he told it that he cursed the serpent to crawl on its belly for the rest of the time. He said, and the serpent thought to itself, "Oh God, I'm not going to be able to fly as usual anymore." So he's cursed the serpent.
What a shame! You've taken my non-existent legs away.
He really took it easy on what then explained later on in Christianity as Lucifer, morning star because it was a
Mm.
shiny one. But in Judaism, it's just a serpent. It's actually a symbol for knowledge.
Right.
Yeah. So later on, Christianity developed the serpent idea to be actual Lucifer, who again for an omniscient God to allow Lucifer to go there and lure men into this. It's like, okay, well, it's part of the plan though. Plus the very obvious situation where he pointed out the tree, so Garden of Eden, millions of trees, millions, So I don't think if he pointed at that tree, Adam would have even seen it, you know.
Yeah. And so, Honey, in Judaism, just does it retain itself as the tree of knowledge, and that's what Adam and Eve ate from, and therefore they had knowledge that they were now naked and unclothed, and that's when shame and all these things came into play? Does Judaism kind of stop there?
The tree of knowledge of good and evil, yes, they be
Okay.
able to, yeah. So which begs the question, because oft before they've eaten from it, they did not know the difference between good and evil,
Yeah.
and therefore they haven't erred. When you think about it, they have done it because they have no knowledge. Once they've had the knowledge, then you're able to judge. But judging them before having the knowledge is a bit harsh, considering that the judgment is going to be for forever. That's why Jesus came. Without this story, Jesus' existence would make no sense whatsoever. He's only there for that last scene of the crucifixion.
Yeah.
So it's orchestrated. It had to happen that way. Otherwise, Jesus wouldn't have a job description. He would just he would have to be laid off.
Yeah. As well as all the other prophets that came after him and all the previous Islamic ones too, because yeah, nothing makes sense.
Yeah. So and then obviously Christianity added to that, and again Mary had to be virgin.
Mm.
So there is that obsession, and you'll find that obsession in Islam as well. And I'd like to get your take on that. The obsession of a virgin woman. It's almost like men must have the power. It's almost like it's their power to be able to do that, and it has to be them and no other competition. And even in Islam, they're talking about virgins who have their hymens renewed, so men can,
Yeah.
deflower over and over as if it's a brilliant thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think this whole aspect of purity, I mean, even if we go all the way back to Mary, again, it's weird that we just take this story at face value and accept it, because if you think about the Christian theology behind it, it's essentially God impregnating a young teenage girl supposedly against her will. So it's like rape of the highest order. It's divine rape. And then again, as you said, the there could be no mortal man on earth that would be able to impregnate a woman in the way we see and give birth to somebody who would be at the divine level of like a Messiah or the Son of God or God incarnate himself. But yeah, like you said, that theme of modesty culture, purity culture, this whole thing about your virginity is absolutely fundamental to your worth as a woman. We just see what Abrahamic religions do with that concept. And again, like I'm sure we'll touch on it, but the Islamic obsession with marrying young girls, and it goes further to say, like, the Prophet encouraged marrying young maidens, virgins, all of these kind of words, so that, like, the reasons are again disgusting, so that you may fondle them and them you. Again, the disdain for a woman that's already been married or like widowed, or like the actual four rightly guided caliphs, even them in the hadith have said that a woman that can't have babies is like a doormat. She's less worth than a doormat, the Arabic mat made of twigs that they used to have. And I mean, you just see how women, your entire worth relies on your sexuality, what is between your legs, and keeping that pure for your one husband, whereas he's allowed to have that, extend to all of the wives that he chooses.
Yeah, and it kind of makes sense, because that's probably in a poor, ignorant world, that's probably the one almost free recreational area. That's the only thing there. It's food and it's sex, and because the world was limited to these sort of things. But let's skip forward to the Arabian Peninsula, circa 6th century,
Yeah.
and let's have a look at the scene, because Islam is trying to portray that the state of women before the arrival of Islam was horrible, and Islam just steered it the right direction. But even within the narration of the Islamic story itself, there is an admission that that isn't true or wasn't true, because Muhammad, when he married Khadija, he was 25, she was 40, she was a business owner.
Mm.
She was very well respected. She can actually order, she had people working for her, and she actually inherited a lot of that money from her parents. Didn't get, looks like she didn't get half of her brother.
Mhm.
Like with Islam, she looks like she's kind of it looks like the situation there wasn't as portrayed in Islam. Looks like women had a good say then. Then Islam apparently comes along to rescue women.
Yeah.
Some would say. I mean, how do you see that?
Again, Hani, this was, initially growing up as a Muslim, you're just told the story from there. You're told that they were burying baby girls, and Muhammad came and he put a stop to that. He was slowly getting rid of slavery as well. He had so many wives because, look, he wanted to show you should marry widows, you should marry young virgins, you should marry everyone in between. So you're given like kind of that narrative, but it only takes you, as you said, to look at Muhammad pre his prophethood to see that he was essentially like Khadija wore the trousers in that relationship, so to speak. She brought in the money. He was essentially at her best, at her beck and call. He worked for her. She had such a high status that she was even considered like a priestess in that Qurayshi tribe, so much so that she, believed that she could summon or know when Muhammad was getting a revelation. And his actions of like having these experiences in the cave, or what, I don't know, we'd consider today maybe a fit of some kind, the way he would go running back to her and the way that he didn't veer out of line once when he was married to her just shows the kind of domineering relationship that was at stake. And not only Khadija, there were other Qurayshi women who were known for their business acumen, and they were successful in their own right. So yeah, it just blows all of those Islamic claims out of the water.
There is a theory going around now that the scientific method was quite advanced in the Arabian Peninsula, and they might have actually got to cloning, because with the bearing of all the girls that is so prevalent then, the only way you can have yourself four wives is to start cloning, because where the hell would they get all these women from if they were burying girls right, left, and center?
Exactly. And again, when they say that the reason we needed to have polygamy is because so many wives were left without husbands and they were widowed and stuff, but there shouldn't have been that many roaming around if every other baby girl was getting buried alive. So yeah, it's just, and again, honey, the way that they've disguised it for so long, I think before, how much the internet has exposed Islam, but you actually do just write that because you don't have access to those primary sources. We didn't really know what was happening in 6th, 7th century Arabia at the time. So they could honestly write off that whole period in history by saying Jahiliyyah. That was the period of ignorance. And a lot of, I'm sure it's different for you, but as a non-native Arabic speaker, I do just, I did just write that off as, yeah, that was Jahiliyyah. That's still what's happening around the world. But Islam tried to get rid of this. So you kind of fall for all these lies.
And the word Jahiliyyah, the root word is, as you know, Jahl, which means
Yeah.
ignorance. So
Yeah.
but that area, there were Jews, there were Christians, so there weren't right. They were actually, I mean, for the age and for the position on the map, because we're talking about desert sort of area, and that sort of dictates sort of harsh living, But they were not. They were not. They were faring okay. That area where Kaaba was, and there was a market of a cosmopolitan appeal, that all sort of gods were being traded, and it's like a market where you can go and shop around, and it's a station for travelers to stop at. So it was like Dubai of the 6th century type of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's very interesting, but I think they needed to do that. There was an author by the name of Taha Hussein, an Egyptian author, who actually said, wrote a book showing that the pre-Islamic poetry was almost all made after Islam, just to show this area in a certain way to suit the Islamic narrative.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's interesting because I was just going to bring up a point where I thought this is, I mean, even if the Quran was meant to be some, new amazing revelation from God and the continuation of the Abrahamic faiths that came before it, it's weird that even in the Quran you find the Qurayshi tribe around Muhammad at the time saying these are just old stories that we've heard before. You're
True.
repeating previous tales. So even that whole aspect of the Quran was this beautiful thing. I just actually, somebody left a comment on one of my YouTube videos and I want to investigate it a bit more, but there was an argument that the Quran, a lot of it was already pre-written. I can't remember the author now, but it was just preceding when Muhammad came into his own right as a prophet. So I think that is really interesting because Hani, have you heard some of the, now you've thrown a spanner into the works, but pre-Islamic poetry, when I think Abdullah Samir did a really good video and I listened to it and I was blown away by how it is exactly the Quran, because there's a certain appeal with the rhyme and the way the Arabic does flow, even someone like me.
You're
But
probably talking about the poet Emre Al-Qais, who
yes,
wrote about the splitting of the moon, right?
yes, that's the
And,
name,
yeah,
exactly.
and that Quranic verse has nothing to do with the alleged miracle of Muhammad of splitting the moon. The Quranic verse, all the tafsirs are talking about the end of days signs.
Oh wow, signs of Qiyamah. So it wasn't a
Yes,
miracle. Oh wow,
not at
okay.
all, not at all. A lot of people linking it that way, but the actual story is in the Hadith, where Muhammad at night, and everybody was asleep for some reason.
Everyone's sleeping.
Very convenient. So God, shows a great miracle in front of all these and he does it in a way that most people are asleep, and the rest of the world doesn't see it. We have record of the Chinese culture recording a supernova. A supernova is the event where a giant star explodes to create the heavy elements that way, the copper, the iron, all the stuff that the heavy elements in the periodic table. It's actually mentioned because the sky is lit for about 2 weeks, and that's recorded, and nobody in this world recorded a sight. We're talking about the moon. And what would this event, because that will change the landscape of the earth, the tides.
100%. The tidal cataclysms, it would be a mess, the
Yeah,
rotation of the earth.
the werewolves would go mad because it would be
Yeah.
full moon and they don't know what to do, and they'll be howling and nothing.
Oh gosh, we'd be overrun by werewolves. Yeah. The vampires would be out. It would be chaos.
It's crazy, but it's a very funny story. But again, that's not the right story. But yeah, but they reckon these verses, the poetry, is not pre-Islam. It was made after Islam in the Abbasid Empire, and some of the Quranic verses too. There's a lot of talking about that the Quran wasn't written really over that 23 years of Muhammad's prophethood, but it was actually a lot of it was compiled and added on later on in different eras, and it make complete sense.
Yeah, because I guess that this is what's so interesting about all the new research and arguments that are coming forward, right? Because now you've piqued my interest in this line of thinking. So I'd love to go and see it, because people have said this. It makes sense that even the word Muhammad, he's not really referred to in the Quran. I think he's mentioned in 2 places. And even then, Muhammad is just a title, right? It's not necessarily a
True.
name. So who even really knows? They've just, who was it? Dan Gibson, who says the book and the man. So was there the book and the man from the beginning, or did they conjure up the book based on the man, or vice versa? So I guess that this is it's such a fun time to be alive, because this religion, no matter which angle it's being kind of uncovered and researched into, the main thing is, Hanney, it's holes in the standard narrative, like left, right, and center.
Yeah, same story with Jesus. I mean, and we're talking about a time in history where nothing has been recorded. Even when it gets recorded, how do we notice even according to what really happened, and it wasn't manipulated? For goodness sake, we had Trump speaking a few years ago, and it was alleged that he had millions behind him, and then the actual count came as 30,000. And this is the time of media and television on him, and people are twisting stories already in the modern era where documentation is quite stringent. Imagine back in the day where people were just There's no scientific approach about anything. People telling stories for a living. There were no TV or theater. Stories is what sustained people, travelers, and exaggeration was the order of the day. It was a world filled with dragons and witches and flying carpets and genies and things like that. So I wouldn't trust that for my life. Like I would not trust a thing, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, 100%. And honey, I was watching this documentary about, I think it's Jonathan Ross, and it's called Myths, Legends, and something. But he just traverses the UK, and he like delves into like Celtic mythology and like just everything that was going on here. And it's so, you can just tell, like, if you were to see that landscape and see the kind of fairies and pixies and gnomes and sea waters like the Loch Ness monster that they've all conjured up, and dragons, and how to, in the caves, like between the isles, how to traverse like between worlds. It is exactly like, it makes sense that in the Arabian Peninsula, or wherever, Petra, Yemen, wherever it could have been, they were also coming up with stories to suit their own landscape. And as you said, it just makes it so much like clearer that even if Muhammad was a man in existence, whether he was in Petra, whether he was in the south of Yemen, whether he was in Mecca, which again, the Mecca theory, for me, I'm not buying it, because it wasn't a trade route in its own right. It wasn't even known. But it's just very, very interesting, because I think his, as you mentioned, his character, like Jesus himself, Jesus did not know what people would turn him into eventually,
Yeah.
even if he did exist.
I've just had on my channel, and I think there'll be English subtitle. I've just had a manuscript expert in the Arabic old manuscripts interviewed, and we'll have a second part. He's like your Bart Ehrman of the Islamic world, and we were looking at the font the earliest Quran was written in, and whether it actually belonged to the area where Islam is alleged to have come from, and it actually isn't. It's not matching. So there are a lot of indications that definitely Islam didn't start within the Mecca area. Actually, the Mecca didn't even exist.
Exactly.
Yathrib, which is even a smaller place, has a historical reference by Yathripo. Was a name mentioned, but Mecca was never mentioned until like a few centuries later. Like it's almost was manufactured.
And even like the other city, like, I mean, I've been there myself, and I was a bit shocked when I was a believer that Taif, the city in Mecca, which is like full of monkeys, but that's apparently where the Prophet went when he was thrown pelted rocks at to like leave. But when you look at the landscape again, it's like mountainous, it's rugged, it's like a different, almost like a different climate to the rest of Arabia. But then you realize that so much of the Quran contains Ethiopic words, and you realize that the first supposed king that they went to seek refuge was the king of Abyssinia at the time. And then you've got the Kaaba, the really, really infamous Yemeni Kaaba, which the Prophet considered that side of the Kaaba to be the most important one. So you also think to yourself, why this obsession with Ethiopia? Why did you know you'd be safe there? Why give this importance to the Yemeni Kaaba? And then the Prophet actually ordered to go and destroy the entire Kaaba. I think it was called one of the Kaabas, I forgot the name. But it's just interesting that there's so much happening, even the landscape that's being described in the Quran, that's just not pertinent to Mecca enough. Yeah.
You mentioned monkeys in Taif.
Yeah.
These aren't monkeys.
What are they?
They're Jews.
And Christians.
Jews, yeah.
That's the evidence. Those are who God sent. You got it.
Were they stingy with their money? They're definitely Jews.
So funny.
Especially with the one with big noses. The monkey with a big nose. It's a. I don't want to. Why Jews have big noses?
No, why? Because that's stingy.
They're for free. I'm sorry to have a dig here, but might as well. I mean, I'm like a Ricky Gervais. Nobody's safe. I like to have a dig even of myself. So
I love that.
We're all gonna die soon. So shut up and just have a laugh.
A science to that.
Right. So let's advance with the state of women, and let's get into some of the stuff that Islam actually says about women. And recently, you and I were absolutely enraged by some of the comments. You've seen the debate on David's channel, where I was actually sorry. It started with on Derek's channel. I had a conversation with Masood on Derek's channel, and it was supposed to be a scientific debate that had nothing to do with science whatsoever, at least from one party. I can assure you of that. But then he insisted on having a conversation with David. David finally yielded and gave him some space, and I can see David's blood boiling over time, because the gentleman was actually trying to say that beating women is what saves women somehow, or saves humanity. And he even wants to apply Sharia. He called it Sharia law. He wrote a strange book by the name of Sharia for Australians. He wants to apply Sharia law in Australia. And he's actually saying a world that men beats women is somewhat a better world, or somehow it's a very strange thing. And David was like really very annoyed and upset by it. And then we had a conversation later on David's channel. But you've watched some of that, I think you were on the channel that day.
Yeah, I did.
What
I
did you
definitely,
feel?
I stuck around for as long as I could listen to his arguments, but I think I stopped on when you guys asked, do you want Sharia law in Australia? And then he was a bit hesitant to say yes outright. But Hani, I'm shocked that there are people who think like this in your guys' country, like outright, because this is like the level of what the Islamists in the UK say. We want the flag of Islam flying high, above the Houses of Parliament, and those are people that are literally on watch lists and things. But yeah, I'm sorry, David. Yeah, David is still here. David, I'm sorry for what you had to go through, and Hani as well. This is bad.
Just before, because I want to finish the story, but a very quick question for you here. Did you read this book by Layla Abu Logd?
Do women need say Muslim women? No, I haven't actually. I will look into it. That's an interesting title.
Yeah, I haven't read it either, so I'll definitely want to look it up.
Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Yeah, so this conversation, this is a very interesting situation here where I lost my train of thoughts. Where were we?
We were just gonna dig
Oh,
into
that's
what
it.
Islam says about women. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
and exactly you explaining how this came
yeah.
about.
So it was back on, and I'll start sharing it so people can actually see it with us. So we will read the text exactly in front of everybody and see the tafsir, or the explanation provided later on. Okay, so you want to go to this is Al Nisa, or the surah, the women, and starting from 34, because this is the background of it. It's almost like God is trying to justify what is he about to say later on by saying, he's trying to give it a bit of logic why he thinks men are better than women. It says here, men are the protectors and maintainers of women, meaning the man is responsible for women, and he is her maintainer, caretaker, leader, who disciplines her if she deviates.
That
The
is
hell?
on no uncertain terms, honey. Could you zoom in just like one or two times, just so people know that it's actually there word for word?
Yeah. So you want me to say what I just said again, or repeat?
Oh yeah,
I'm
no,
just
that's perfect. Yeah, that's great. Just so
making the font a bit bigger here for people to read. Yeah, so this is the Quran 434, where God is explaining or putting the background logic behind what he's, the few shocking facts that he's about to say about men have the ability to beat women. Uh, he's saying men are protectors and maintainers of women, meaning the man is responsible for women, and he is her maintainer, caretaker, and leader who disciplines her if she deviates. I mean, that is clear, isn't it? I mean, what
crystal.
else can you read
Okay.
into it? Yeah.
No.
And then moves on to say, because men excel over women, are better than them for certain tasks. This is why prophethood was exclusive of men, as well as other important positions of leadership, the prophet said. So women are not to be trusted.
She's getting such a bad rap here.
It's horrible. It's just horrible. I, I mean, if you're a woman and you're still a Muslim, I just don't understand how it has to be a Stockholm syndrome at this point.
Yeah,
Because this,
especially, honey, when a lot of the Muslim women that I see try and defend Islam and say it's the most feminist quote this very surah. Like they say, no, Surah Nisa is like our surah. It gave us so many rights. This is the kind of stuff that's in there. It's just wild to me. But also, just this is echoed a lot in like the hadith and the way that Muslim men are meant to treat women in general, because the Prophet even went as far as to say, if I was to command anyone else to bow to anyone other than God, I would command women to bow to their husbands.
yeah, very true. I'm just trying to find um, the verse. I thought it was 434, but I'm trying to get to the beating one.
Yeah, next verse. Stuff. It is 434.
Yeah, but for some reason,
Yeah.
oh, here we go. Here we go. Dealing with wives of ill conduct.
What about the man's ill conduct?
So this is the nushuz thing, the one that disobeys. So it starts from meaning the women from whom you'll see ill conduct with her husband, such as when she acts as if she's above her husband. I love how the explainer is really, really upset by it. Who do you think you are? You're not above me.
How dare you? Remember your place, woman. Be seen and not heard.
Ignore, such as when she acts as if she's above her husband, disobeys him, ignores him, dislikes him, and so forth.
They're so insecure.
I know. I think the explainer is really hiding some big insecurities in there.
For real. And this is
when these signs appear in a woman, her husband should advise her. Okay, that's step one. Advise her and remind her of Allah's torment if she disobeys him. Indeed, Allah ordered the wife to obey her husband and prohibited her from disobeying him because of the enormity of his rights and all that does for her.
Enormity of his rights.
Here we go. That oh my God, this is a look at this one here. I think this is from the hadith.
Yeah.
If I were command anyone to prostrate before anyone, I would have commanded the wife to prostrate before her husband because of the. I mean, God is saying that God is giving the act of worship, and he's actually giving a hypothetical. If I was to, and this is what I would have done. I mean, and God's supposed to have said that.
Exactly, and he's also teasing, like, if I was to allow shirk, this is what I'd allow next. He's also teasing.
God! Like, I mean, it's so obvious. It was written by a male.
Yep.
It's
like,
incredible.
In a way, honey, it's saying that if, like, because Muslim men or Muslim everybody prostrates to Allah, it's as if saying that the relationship between a husband and wife is almost like that the man, in a sense, is Allah and you're the slave. Again, like that same comparison of if I was to make anyone bow, it would be to bow. And again, this is something I actually read a tweet the other day from UK Islam. He actually took a very different approach to, men are the caretakers of women, because that means that even in today's day and age, Hani, for a religion that's meant to be timeless, now we see that women work more than ever. Women are earning more than men. Men aren't really required to put food on the table. Women can do that independently. So Islam almost like keeps this whole, like, all of the basically financial burden technically should be on a Muslim man in a relationship context forevermore. That's essentially that's why a woman needs to submit to him. If you take that out of the equation, there's no need for this caretakers of women, or because they provide, or it's redundant.
The next one you're gonna love. That's another hadith about certain angels were created with a certain job description in mind. They are the cursors of women, who refuse to sleep with their husbands. So that's their job. So an angel will be created, say, dude, you've got a new job for you. You are going to be assigned with the task to curse women when they're not in the mood for whatever reason. So it says here, if the man asks his wife to come to his bed and she declines, the angels will keep cursing her until the morning. Muslim recorded it in the morning. I mean, bloody hell! Somebody was high writing this stuff. I mean, this is crazy.
Honestly. And somehow Hannah, she wakes up and all those curses don't really have any viable effect. It's just so weird. You've got angels. Everyone right now is against women. You've got Allah siding with Muslim men. You've got the angels siding with all three of them as well.
Yeah. I wonder what kind of curses. I mean, like they could be like foul, like like the F words of this is supposed to be like holy place. This is the transcendent of the transcendent. This is the heavenly realm. And there's like foul mouth, like angels rapping and saying all these sort of horrible things in the presence of God. I mean, this is bizarre. This is
Well,
strange.
honey, I imagine it to be like the kind of cursing the way God curses out Abu Lahab. It's probably on that. It's probably
Oh
to
yeah,
that.
well, true. He's done it himself.
May you stupid, filthy woman who refuses to give her husband sex be cursed. May your da 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 in hellfire.
What was I thinking? I mean, he's done it over and over again. I mean, he's in all religions. So this God is pretty. It's
Pretty
pretty
good with curses.
small-minded. Yeah,
Yeah.
very small-minded. But then we're gonna get to the lovely stuff where about there's a physical now. At least with curses, we're talking about still psychological harm, but at least with words. But we're going to get to a point where, and this is serious now. I can't laugh about this or joke about this because there are thousands of women in the Middle East who would be going to the police station to report domestic violence and will be turned away. And saying, look, this is a domestic affair. You want to take it with your husband, sort of thing, and there will be no further repercussions. And could have led to the death of some women. I'm certain of at some point, but at least a lot of oppressed women, and we're talking 50% of society. Um, Here we go, and it says, as those women on whose part you'll see ill conduct, admonish them first. So the admonishment, and then the abandoning them in beds. The abandonment refers to not having intercourse with her. It's not just an abandon, like as in, we're talking strictly about sex here.
It's withholding sex. Yeah.
Withholding sex, yeah. Several others said similarly. These are the narrators, and not to speak with her or talk to her. The Sunan Muslim compiler is recorded, so that this person goes a little bit further. And beat them means if advice and ignoring her in the bed do not produce the desired results, you're allowed to discipline the wife without severe beating. I don't know where the hell they got this from. Muslim recorded that Jabir said that during the farewell of Hajj, the Prophet said. So this is I think a cheap apology later on from human beings who started to feel a little bit, this is not right. It's going to be beating them, but lightly. How do you see this verse?
I mean, Hani, exactly what you were saying. Like having even worked in the sector, knowing that there are men out there who quote the Quran and use this verse as their justification for essentially domestic violence. And they actually go as far as to say, it is my God-given right. So when you've got a divine right to beat your wife, most of the Western world is doing everything. The UK is considering domestic violence to be like a national emergency at the moment. So it's on the same level as terrorism. And the charges for it are getting so much more severe that you would be noted on a system forever. So the fact that this book is essentially encouraging that, and as Hanney was saying, like, I don't know at what turn of the century the word lightly got added in brackets or in parentheses, and everyone tried to, as Hanney was saying, water down what the essential verse says, because lightly according to who? That's such a subjective concept. Then they started throwing into the psyche that, oh, it referred to a toothbrush. Again, the very concept is degrading and belittling and sexist and violent from the get-go, whether it's with a toothbrush or a miswak or with your finger. There are videos of Saudi clerics telling people on national TV how to beat your wife in a reasonable manner. There was a survey done where I think 70% of women in Egypt believe that they deserve to be beaten up if they supposedly, disobey their husband. So it's just a disgusting phenomenon that's come out of Islam, and I can't believe how long they've been able to get away with something like this, Hani. But I did want to ask you, because you do speak Arabic, when you read the word daraba in that Quran,
Oh
to
yeah.
beat, is there anything in your mind that thinks lightly, or there's connotations
It,
of
it must be have an objective. Well, the objective here has always been the women, and
mm,
it might change meaning if you have a proposition, like the word hits, in or any verb in the English language, it might change its meaning by adding a proposition to it. Yeah, you fill out a form by filling it in.
mhm,
That's one of the wonders of the English language. Um, but
true,
you add a proposition and things will change. Sometimes you can use that word to mean to give an example, but the objective here in the sentence must be an example.
mhm,
It cannot be hidden. They're talking about women, the entire narrative,
yeah,
and the noon at the very end of the verb is a female. It refers back to females, right? So it can be anything other, and it has to be a conscious female. It's not a thing, because the definitive article in Arabic is different, for example, than German, where
yeah,
if it's a feminine, means it's a living female. It's not just a thing that's given a female definitive article, like in German, where it can still be a thing. Um, so it's definitely he's talking about women, and
yeah,
and 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 then you'll think, okay, well, if he meant something else, why the hell, with the old array of words at choice, use a word that could be confused by something else?
mhm,
We're talking about the most intelligent being that ever existed, and I can come up with a better word that cannot be confused. Like if he meant to say divorce them, the word divorce, talaq, is mentioned in the Quran. Why didn't he use that?
yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah. So even if you try to find excuses, it gets worse from that point on.
It gets worse because that same point that you're making about, again, an omnipotent, omniscient creator could not put together a set of values and morals in a book, where even the Quran verse about when you're married, to the divorce period, the waiting iddat period for girls or women who have not yet menstruated, no all-knowing, all-powerful creator would allow something to be interpreted so perversely that all of these child brides in the world are a result of these men, again, thinking it's their God-given right to be able to do, not even that, but following the example of the most perfect man in doing so. So we see what's happening in Afghanistan. And again, whether this means lightly or not, or it's implied, or for so long, even in a country like Pakistan, where when you look into religion, they just try and nip it in the bud by saying, you don't speak Arabic, leave it to the scholars, leave it to the scholars. So when you've got these Islamic parties in the country, they were the ones who, when the country was trying to push the domestic violence bill to protect women, these Islamic parties were the one that was saying, how dare you, this goes against Islam. So there's like a whole country out there who thinks, no, our women need to be beaten because our Quran sanctions that and sanctifies it. So this is not just like, these aren't arbitrary words in a Quran. Like the sad reality is most women, and the most women that I'm surrounded by, have not read the Quran. Like they've not looked into it, they've not read it, they've not understood it. They just know enough to bow down and pray on the occasional Friday or during Ramadan, you know?
Yeah, and then this is just, we're talking Quran. There's some weird hadith. Like there's another one about women, um, black dogs and donkeys nullify men's prayers,
Mm,
and there are some Quranic verses where women and feces men are ordered to, yeah, there,
What?
yeah. There's I need to I'll find it when you're talk next, and we're shown in front of people where they put together as things that men need to purify themselves from.
Oh my days.
Have you
Okay,
gone-
I
yeah.
because even what the thing you were saying previously, like dogs and donkeys and women nullify the prayer, Aisha herself said to Muhammad, "What have you done, mate? You've literally relegated us to dogs and donkeys. You're comparing us to that." So I mean, she even in at that time in history, she was like, "Hold on, that's a weird thing. That's a weird take. You're putting us." That's why women and chattel were very similar in this whole concept, like the way you tame your chattel, the way it's the same way you take care, discipline your women if they step out of line. That's why we're always, even in Muhammad's final sermon, the real version again, he says, treat your women well, for they are like prisoners with you. Not for it's so bad. I'd love to actually share that version with you, Hani, in Arabic. It's disgusting.
It's so much going on here. It's a lot of. But this is how the ancient world. I mean, once you put it in the right context, to say this is not the creator of the universe. This is this ignorant peasants, and that's what they thought at the time. They just wrote what they thought. It makes sense then. It will start making sense. This is how the world behaved. The world was. I mean, we're talking about this is a big problem. This ancient issue of males taking over females, and it was prevalent elsewhere, and it wasn't just in Arabia, and the rest of the world was doing the same thing, sometimes even worse in certain areas. Um, and this is a problem that we're trying to sort of overcome because it's actually retarded the world. Imagine if women were emancipated a long time ago. We're talking about 50% of the productive creating power and energy is let go of from very early time. Imagine the amount of advancements humanity would have reached by now.
We'd be
it's,
so much further than we are today, that's for sure. So much further. In fact, we don't even know about a lot of the women's contributions historically. It's only coming to light now where we're trying to say, even during the World War II, the woman who cracked the code, the person who cracked the code was a woman. Like all of these things, the people who have gotten us to space thus far, the role of women behind it. But again, I think, as you said, I was watching a show on Netflix which went into how the Hasidic Jews really think and believe in, again, similar concepts of not showing your hair to anyone but your husband, and then you've got to wear a wig, and the way that they are supposed
you're
to have.
referring to Orthodox?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. I love that.
It was like giving me the kind of Sharia levels anxiety when I was watching it.
You see how they shave their heads and still put a wig?
I
So
know.
they're allowed not to show their real hair, but they're allowed to show fake hair. So
Exactly. And then they can
that's
only
the
show the
hijab.
real. Yeah, yeah.
That's the hijab, but with with a wig. That's
Yeah.
weird. It's very strange.
It's so odd because then you can only show your real hair to your husband, but your real hair would always be shaved because you have to account for a wig unless you actually have. Anyway, the way that they're also meant to consummate the marriage and not there's no enjoyment to the husband-wife relationship. It's very much similar to kind of be seen and not heard. Exquisite gender roles, like very much. Women weren't even allowed to read the scripture apparently.
Yeah,
So yeah, it's dark.
it's only for men, and yeah, and it's part in Judaism as well. Yeah, if you can't take pleasure in sex, it's sex is only for reproduction, and that's why you
Procreation.
had those scenes where it's so awkward and it's so horrible, where they could have had fun with it, but they couldn't. God told them this is not for fun. No, not even that is fun. That's for you. It's the holy act of recreation or reproduction, and it's so grim and it's watching that little girl and running away, and it's a fantastic story. I've really urged people to watch this. Is it called Orthodox or
Yeah,
Unorthodox?
I think it's called
I-
unorthodox. Yeah,
Unorthodox,
yeah,
and it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It shows a very very and these were remember there was some of them were living in New York,
yeah.
and they still speak with an accent, like it's the Yiddish, which is like between German and a bit of Hebrew mixed together, and it's a very funny language. And they walk around in streets of New York with the old, you know, the locks and the Jewish look, and they live in a small world. By the way, these are anti-Zionists. They don't believe in Israel.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Okay. So they
you'll,
believe.
you'll,
Yeah, go ahead.
they don't believe in the state of Israel. They their Messiah is going to be different. It's not like that.
Oh,
So they
he's
don't.
gonna
Yeah,
come to America or something.
yeah. You often see them in America will hold demonstrations and to say, well, we're with Palestinians on that, not the Israeli Jews,
Oh,
which
I
is
did not
really
know
strange.
that. Mm. Oh wow, that's interesting. Okay, but yeah, again, what you see in that whole show, the level of shunning, again, honey, it just seems like that level of intensity. For example, when you're trying to leave Islam, or be it a vocal apostate, or even just turn away from it, they have. And but again, it was horrifying to see when you're so kind of embellished within a community like that. These people at the age of 20 plus, how to learn how to use what an ATM was, how to do a job application, basic things that we take for granted. And because you're living according to that time that was enshrined in their little world. It could be whatever the year they were first established, but it was interesting to also see that they believe that the Holocaust, I'm not sure if it was these Orthodox Jews, but there's a sect that believe that the Holocaust happened because they had turned their back on the original values of God.
Oh
And so
yeah.
they could never, ever, like, turn away from God's path. And now they have to, like, follow it by the book, word for word, and get back onto the right path, which was crazy.
Have you seen the BBC production Gods on Trial?
No,
Oh, you haven't?
no.
Oh,
Did they?
I'll send you the link. It's British production about a few Jewish people are about to be killed, and they've actually done a trial for God within in the ghetto.
Oh
It's
my
a fantastic movie. It's British.
Yeah. Oh wow. Please send it to me. I'll watch it this afternoon.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant because it has all the problem of evil, and some of them suggested just that maybe God, this is God's punishment for something that we have done and that we're not aware of. So they have these conversation going on. It's a brilliant movie. Um,
Wow.
it's TV production. Wasn't even cinema. It was just a TV.
Oh, thanks, honey.
Uh, um, so Aisha is a very interesting female in Islamic history. She seems to be had the seed for intelligent lady. He even said to Muhammad, especially at the circumstance of him seeing his adopted son Zayd's wife and liking her and holding that feeling, then for a Quranic verse to come down and say, "Why do you hold uh, legal and lawful feelings, Prophet Muhammad?" You know, and they're gonna make it legal for him for Zayd to divorce his adopted son to divorce his wife, so Muhammad can marry her. And then Aisha said, "Oh, what the hell's going on here? I see God as soon as you want something. There's like a verse down down from the sky just to match what you want."
Yeah, she says, I fear your Lord hastens to fulfill your desires. Not even
Yeah,
like the Lord, like your Lord. Like, did she know?
she's on to something. Eh?
Yeah. No, I do honestly, in my reading of just the snippets that have been narrated to us from the Hadith and stuff, I do consider her one of the first feminists of that time, because the fact that she's left these tidbits of information where she's like, yo, Muhammad, why are you putting us into the same level as dogs and donkeys? Like, what have you done to humanity? And then, sorry, to women. And then the fact that your Lord hastens to fulfill your desires, the fact that that you needed four witnesses because Muhammad was doubting Aisha a little bit, and he
Oh, the
apparently
F,
had yeah,
the F incident. Yeah,
yeah, and then he had apparently so much love for her that he's like, no way, you need four witnesses. If there was three, you need four now. But she
yeah.
very much has even if I don't know how much truth there was, but the fact that the verses of breastfeeding and stoning were lost, and she says that she put them under her pillow and then a tame sheep or someone came and ate it. Again, it's the mind of a woman thinking, really? And none of the women at the time were kind of okay with this. Aisha would always make somebody else do the breastfeeding aspects, but I'm grateful to this day because I mean, can you imagine those like those some of the ayatollahs and stuff of Iran were trying to put this into a fatwa on how men and women could be in the same room together or work together. Otherwise, it's just a no-go according to Sharia. But again, it seemed like a very boss woman move for her to let it
Yeah,
get eaten.
a man and woman always the devil is their third. There's no way a man can have a conversation with they have to think like that. Um, it's very funny. One of the Quranic verse and the Muslims use quite a lot to justify to God's reservation of the preservation of the Quranic text by he's vowed to protect it from being lost or
Yeah.
forgotten. Yet a stupid goat could go there and just eat some of the Quran, and the verse never makes it. It's like, what?
Exactly. And again, like when they were freaking out after that battle, that all of the people who've memorized the Quran are dying off. Can someone write this down quickly?
I know, and they start burning versions of the full Quran because they weren't right. I mean, who
Yeah.
decided then? How would they know for sure? It's so. I mean, this is so bad. But a lot of people still believe it. But a lot of people don't know the ins. I mean, most Muslims are a lot of good people. They're just human beings. They just want to live, peacefully. They might not be really deep into religion. They don't know so many things about what they'll just know about the Jewish person who used to throw rubbish at the prophet's door, and one day he just stopped, and the prophet went and visited him to just find his bill. And it's actually a weak hadith. It's not
Yes. It
very
feels like,
weak.
yeah.
So that's the only thing they know about Islam. Sorry, I'm interrupting you there.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your point. It was a great point.
No, that was the point I've made. Yeah.
Yeah, no, because again, the sad reality is we can talk like this because, like, it's all come to light now. There's different manuscripts of the Quran. The Birmingham manuscript has caused its own set of issues. Then they're saying like there's tiny variations, and then the whole argument about do you need what are they called, the diacritic marks or whatever, even before.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole argument: well, could Arabs of the Quraysh understand it without the marks in the same way that people from different parts of Arabia could understand it, or would they put their own understanding of it? But again, Muslims that I come across today who are so just, again, they're set in being okay with these stories that you've just told us, and hearing the standard narrative, that it doesn't shake their core to know that the Quran that we see today might not be the full and only version that ever existed. So that's in direct conflict to God's word and promise to make the final perfect message, which is never going to be unchanged or tampered with or altered, to the fact that we're saying even a verse can be eaten by a tame sheep. It makes, I mean, if you do ponder on these things though, Hanney, it blows your religious like notion out of the water, right? And then you have to start unpacking everything, and you get to the point where you're like, you and I now, we want to have conversations about so many other things. But sadly, most Muslims are better than Islam, as you said, because they just don't know.
It's crazy. Like the Quran is read differently in Morocco and in Egypt. The different recitation. So, for example, there is a verse that says, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu iza ja'akum fasiqun binaba fatabayyanu." This is how it's read in Egypt. That last word in Morocco is read fatathabbatu, and this because of the dots, and it's actually the exact same words. If you remove all the dots from the word and put the dots in different areas, the two words will emerge. And that is the problem with the punctuation marks and the dotting of the Arabic words before the dotting and later on. So a lot of words are mixed that way, and would actually mean something completely different if you read them that way, which is incredible for God's lost message.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, Hania. Like you would know a lot more, but even like changing the kaf from like the qaf to the kaf, you
Yeah.
got like qalb or kalb, which is like dog or heart, and it changes the entire meaning. And it's just how pronunciations can vary across the peninsula.
Hold on a
And
second.
yeah,
I think my heart is barking.
oh my goodness. And especially because people people who don't pronounce it the right Arabic way and say like, they say kelb as opposed to qal, they are actually reciting it with the word dog in it. So they're already, bastardizing God's message.
You can say, "Ya ibn al-qalb, son of a heart."
That wouldn't be that bad, would it now?
So yeah, it's just funny. I mean, and it begs the question. And I know we deviated a little bit from women, but women are humans, and I think once you get away from the women issue, you'll start want to be treated as a human. At some point, obviously, we're male, female, and I think Morgan Freeman the other day was talking to a Jewish guy about the Jewish guy was asking Morgan Freeman, why don't you want to have a Black People Month? I said, well, I don't want to have that. He said, what do you mean? He said, well, do you have a Jewish month? He said, no, we don't. He said, well, I don't want to have either. So how do we get over racism? He said, how about you stop referring to me as black man and call me Morgan. That's Morgan Freeman, the actor. And I'll call you with your name. And we don't refer to each other with things like that, like who cares, and this is the only way to transcend these stupid things. The only way you demark them is maybe for description. I can understand in criminology that where you say, well, a 6'2" tall black man, because it's mentioned in the context of you work in low function and you will understand that descriptions is very important to pursue a certain person, but the context is not racial. It's not meant to be differentiating the rights of that person. But I think the same needs to happen. Obviously, once we reach a certain equilibrium, we'll stop referring to each other that way. I understand you're a woman. It's implied. I don't need to keep going on and on about that. And you talk to each other as fellow human beings. And I think that might solve the problem eventually. But if we persisting on dealing with each other based on race, and even being overly PC, because, oh, poor him, he must have suffered a lot. I'm just going to be overly nice on this occasion. It's again, I think it's counterproductive. What do you think?
No, I think you're right. I think whether it's, labels like black, white, minority, ethnic, religious affiliations, it's all part and parcel of like identity politics and how much people are getting caught up in it in this day and age. And again, I as you said, if once we break down those barriers one by one and we just start thinking of people as fellow human beings, and everyone comes from their different perspectives. That's why even as a feminist, I like to say that it's intersectional feminism. No, within that, again, there's not a monolith. People come from all over the world with different variations of how they've experienced patriarchy. So if once we can start applying that logic to like the global world in general, that everyone is intersectional yet human, and normalizing the fact that speaking about Islam or something should not have to come with such a high price tag, I think we really would get somewhere. But I'm positive. I like Steven Pinker's approach to, humanity has not been in a better position, holistically speaking, than before.
Yeah, the better angels of our nature and the clear slate is written. Yeah, and with numbers, and that's the difference is when you get numbers and stats. It's by the way, I've starting to hear echo.
Oh, sorry. I don't know why that is. Nothing's changed. But I'll mute.
Okay, cool. Thank you. For some reason, and I can hear it for myself. Yeah, so it's with numbers. Yeah, we're way better. There's still a lot of things wrong that we need to fix, but we were better. We're getting there. We're in constant conversation with each other to improve things. And yeah, we're lucky to be. Imagine if you were born in the 14th century. Without my Xbox One, I don't know what to do.
Honestly, without Uber Eats getting me like sushi on demand or a burrito on demand, I don't know what. But then I guess I'd never know what a burrito or sushi was. So what you don't know can't hurt you, I guess.
Very, very true. But we're lucky. But those who will come after us, I don't know. Maybe we are in the Goldie log zone. Maybe there's an apocalypse coming upon us, and people will be fighting over water like those movies. And eventually something bad would happen, and we're living the best of days.
That's why we just gotta live each day like it's our last, Hanney, and not take ourselves too seriously.
So I want to end the conversation with the last bit, and it again concentrates around women. It's the story of the Isra and Miraj, where Muhammad, during his sleep, was sent to Al Aqsa Mosque and then to the seventh heaven. And this is where the very interesting conversation of how we were supposed to have 50 prayers per day, which is insane. Imagine, I mean, it's unproductive right now. Five prayers is difficult as it is. Imagine 50 prayers per day. But every time he takes it and comes down, Moses would say, "Oh, go back and tell him, you know, get a better number." And of course, he had to be a haggling Jew.
True.
They're very good at it.
Also, how does Moses know better than Allah what we can and can't handle?
Oh, do you know what? The believing brain will still find a way. They'll tell you, do you know what? God has inspired Moses to say these things. There is no way. It's unfalsifiable. You cannot falsify this type of thinking. They'll find a way to still, it's still God, but God is acting in mysterious way. Woo, like
I have
creepy
so
stuff.
much more respect for Moses in this whole situation, though. I'm sorry, I do.
Very pragmatic. Moses bloody, like he crashed the two tablets when he saw his people worshiping the golden calf, and he had to go back to God and say, "Can you please give me a second copy? I think I've lost my copy." It was so funny, that incident, but he was very pragmatic type of prophet. But I want to stop at the scene, because Muhammad was shown to heaven and hell, and he showed that the most inhabitants of hell were women. What's your take on that?
I think again, it's honestly, it's such BS. It's to come down with that tail or wake up from your bed with that tail and scare women, because he'd always say, like, you got women cut. There's hadiths where he says that women are ungrateful, they curse a lot. Again, if anyone should bow to someone, it should be women to their husbands. So he wants to put that fear and really instill fear of women as being subordinate to men. And it's the best way to say it, because why are we in hell? Because we're deficient in religion and intellect. We're deficient in religion because we have a period once in a month, which, again, all the way back to Eve, this conversation comes full circle. But the deficiencies and this fear of not obeying your husbands that I think Muhammad or whoever were really trying to kind of cement is this kind of thinking that, oh, women, even the way we're addressed in the Quran, it's, oh, women, or oh, you believing women, or oh, men, tell your women. There's never like a direct link, and it's just beyond me, because there's no salvation offered to women. If we have to be subordinate and subservient and obey, you'd think that we'd be given something that worthy in the next life, but we're just the pimp masters to 72 virgins for whichever man we end up with. And funny thing, Hani, that story about the Burak, apparently the Burak has like a woman's face, and it wasn't cooperating, so Gabriel punched it in the face as well, which again, it's like, of course you're going to punch the woman's face of the Burak. Standard Islamic.
You should have given them a swag, for fuck's sake. Why is he using brute violence now? We know it has to be likely.
Exactly, and Gabriel, I didn't expect that of him.
Yeah, Gabriel, aka Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
The stories are so funny, and I can't believe. But the fact that women were the most inhabitants of the of hell, and the graphic images, because some of were hanging from their breasts and from their hair, and it's like crazy stuff. And it's almost like they're saying, well, you know what? Women are so seductive. They cause beautiful, innocent men who are like really devout and by nature, they really want to be close to God. But women just figure in the picture and distracts with their beautiful, curvy bodies and hair. And it's almost like they're drooling over the thought and there's no, astaghfirullah, I meant, and they just go back and try to recover from that little wet dream they're having during the day. And then it's like, oh no, but it must be the women. They're causing all of this, and they're causing me not to believe and to distract from the worship of God. Therefore, they must suffer. And how are they going to suffer? They're going to be sent to hell. And when they go to heaven, they're just like a sort of an extra in a movie, like you're the fifth seaman from the left. You're not so really given a big role. You're just there, you're kind of there, but nothing really is given to you as such. And you get your husband back, which is it's like,
Yay!
it's brilliant.
Lucky us. But even that, Hannah, the Prophet fully said a woman appears and reappears in the shape of a devil. 100%, like what you're just saying. That's actually what we're relegated to. That's why he's run back whenever he's, felt lustful to his wives, and then complained about women. Like, even once his desires satiated, he'll still complain that we're like the devil.
I think there was a very funny hadith where the Prophet is giving advice to people. He said, whenever you see a woman and you sort of get seduced by it, go quickly home and have sex with your wife.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. And no matter what she's doing, whether she's tanning leather or...
This is 6th century pornography, like literally. This is how you get excited and go home and finish, and it's nothing to do with the loving relationship with your wife. You get excited by an outside stimulus, and therefore you should go home and empty your seeds. It's just like an absolute, like I think even animals at this point, especially primates, we know that chimpanzees and dolphins have actually sex for fun. Yeah. Not for reproduction.
For pleasure, exactly. Yeah. And Muhammad also flips that on his head, because he says that, once he sees someone in the street, if you lust after them, go back to your wives, because women have the same things, effectively. That's what he was saying.
Yeah, this is incredible. I mean, this is just so bad. It's just, I don't know how you can be a 21st century person who can apologize for this. This is just beyond demeaning, to be honest.
No, I need to shower just after this conversation, honey. Feel dirty just listening to Muhammad talk about us.
Yeah, and so you're having this conversation. We have a virtual devil sitting between us next. The third is always a devil sitting, like in between. And I've got my wife is watching every move in the back here. Like, don't you dare! Don't you dare have these thoughts.
And then she's got the angels again, gonna deal with her if she doesn't comply. Great religion this is.
It's absurd. But some people saying, well, we are twisting the words. There are a couple of Muslims. I've actually had to put somebody on 5 minutes, blocked them for. She actually called you names, and I've removed the and that was his defense. So he's called you the W word. Was spelled with an H, and that is the defense. That's the best.
That's the thing, honey. I can't even take it seriously. Like, come with a point, because really, we're not in high school.
Yeah,
like sticks and stones. No.
it's like after all of this, is like, but you're ugly anyway. Look at your face. It's like, okay, what's that to do with the price of eggs? But everything that we've said here, guys, today, you can go back to the sources. We've displayed some of them. I mean, we were reading verbatim from the source. It wasn't like a Christian site, or it's from the tafsir. That's their own words, and we're just reading them and displaying them in front of you. And you just want to apply your 21st century logic. What we're trying to say is, if this is lost, the Lord's lost message, then it's frozen in time. We've progressed way beyond this. And on that note, I would like to get your final words on the subject, and I would like to, while you're speaking, I will display your channel, and I would like to know as well what sort of work we can expect from you in the future.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Hanney. So again, I'm glad we had this conversation, because, for all the hate and stuff that we do get, I don't want to say too much, but there's some women who were running YouTube channels trying to debunk me, quote unquote, or challenge me. And they've actually reached out and said, you know what, I've actually looked into it and you might be right. Can we talk about what Islam means like for women? And I'm so sorry, like I used to mock you and this and that. So for me, it's really encouraging that even the hate that we might get, there are people slowly and surely waking up. As Hanney was saying, people are realizing that's not just us like making things up out of thin air. We put the source out there. It goes back to the heart of Islam. It's the Quran. It's the word of God. If one thing is problematic for you, even in terms of your sex, your gender, your beliefs, your morals, your views on science, anything, the whole book falls apart. So yeah, I would implore people to read it, especially those Muslims who are already so much further better in their morality and their lives than what Islam tells them to be. I think our job is to just keep pushing out what it really says and just keep the conversation going. I'm gonna just focus a lot more on like worldly things that are happening around the world. But as I said, if these conversations with these ex-Muslim YouTubers go somewhere, then definitely I'm gonna have some very strong women-centric panels coming up. So yeah, do keep an eye out.
Folks, this is Holy Humanist Nuria's channel. You can see a lot of good work in there, lots of great guests and different topics over the time. And your channel's grown very, very quickly in the last 6 months or so. So I'm glad to see that. Hassan is the person that I've just recently given a time out of 5 minutes to chill. But he's saying my point is hadith are man-made nonsense.
So
We
he's a
were
Quranic.
mostly talking about the Quran. We did talk about hadith, but the Quran was the most, so we did talk about the Quran as well. If you're a Quran only Muslim, then you know what happens to you. You're if you deny the hadith and you're a Quran only Muslim, you're actually going to be persecuted by Muslims themselves.
And you're not going to know how to pray and do a whole host of things. That comes with its own set of issues. How do you pray? How do you know? There's like 3 at best mentioned in the Quran, but we're going to go off into another tangent.
Okay, well, here we go. I think that ought to do it. He's made a statement, and Quran is perfect. Okay, well, it is then. No evidence needed for that sort of thing. So yeah, this is Nuria's channel. Please check it out. The full description of the channel is in the description of the video. Check it out. Please subscribe and watch the stuff that she's going to come up with. I think Nuria and I probably will every now and then will convene and have a conversation like this about different aspects. Tell me about your law degree. And I think, have you finished your master's? You're still studying for it?
No, I'm still doing it. I actually put it on pause because my job was just really intense. So I'm going to be restarting in August. So
All right. Yeah. And what do you want to do with it? So once you've got the master degree and the full, what is your aspiration, especially when it comes to human and women rights?
I want to essentially go into public law and human rights. Obviously, there's not a lot of our ex-Muslim representation in these areas, whether it's like, helping people get asylum or be able to have freedom of conscience. So just being able to do more work there where we can highlight the plight of ex-religious people, because at the moment we rely heavily on like lawyers and solicitors, barristers to do pro bono work. So to try and get that more mainstream, I think would be very cool. And just to have more ex-Muslims in the mainstream, whether it's like in government or policy making or things like that, I think our voice needs to be heard. But yeah, it's a good like 1.5 to 2 year road ahead. And yeah, I never know. I might feel like, oh, let me go into family or criminal law as I do it. But the hope right now is public law.
Yeah, a few people were asking about your Twitter account, which is I've added in the chat, guys. Nuria's, you're quite active on Twitter, I can see. It's probably your. Are you on Facebook at all? I've never seen you on Facebook. Yeah. So you're on Twitter mostly.
Yeah, just Twitter and YouTube for my activism.
Yeah, and this is brilliant. So you're very active there, and I can see a lot of tweets with a lot of interactions from people are calling you all sort of names. So it's brilliant.
Yeah, and more that I didn't know about that you can please send me later because I'd love to have a read. I'd like to know what my haters are saying.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nuria, for taking part in today's conversation. I adore your work. You're very important to the activism because there are a lot of thinkers who talk about the meaning and concepts, but very little work is done on the ground where actual people really suffering. So I do appreciate your work and the difference you make in people's real lives. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Hanney. And likewise, I appreciate the work that you're doing and you reaching out to a much, much larger audience. And yeah, whenever we can have these crossovers and you can subtitle them in Arabic and we can push this, I would love to do whatever we can say. Sometimes hearing it from another woman who I still have a bit of a connection with the Middle East, it might just help. So yeah, thank you so much. And to Hassan Jamal, I also wanted to, I have a video where even the shaitan gets into the Quran, so it's far from perfect, but that's a story for a different day. I'll be happy to put the video link in the chat. But yeah, thank you, Hanney. Thank you to everybody watching, and let's do this again soon.
Thank you very much. By the way, folks, this episode, it gets subtitled within 12 hours or 14 hours by YouTube. So if you want to broadcast it on your channel, you take a copy of it, Nuria, and you want to put it in your maybe leave it for 24 hours, then it will come with the full subtitle in different languages, not just Arabic. Will be whatever language people speak. It's done automatically by YouTube, by the way. So I don't know if you've enabled that in your channel, but there is a way to do it. And then all your conversation automatically, within 14 hours or 15 hours, gets translated into like 70 or 80 different languages.
Oh my God. Okay, that's incredible. Yeah, I'll wait 24 hours. Then can I message you separately about how to enable this in Urdu and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Hanney. That would be fab.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, folks. And the next conversation I'm going to be having is mid-April with Hemant Mehta. Hemant Mehta is the founder of Friendly Atheist, and he's ex-Jain, one of the most peaceful religion on earth. But he's now an atheist. But he was, those are the people who would actually put a cloth on their mouth so they won't swallow an insect by mistake. And even though he found it absurd and left it, so I think he would find Islam way too harsh for his ex-belief. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon later.